They were trying to break down my door, my own family, with a crowbar. But when I flung it open, what they saw in my hands made them scream in absolute horror. Hi, I'm Jelena, and I'm 32 years old. For so long, I thought I was finally free from my family's suffocating control. Or at least, I thought I was, right up until this morning. That's when I heard my mother's voice, sharp and furious, screaming outside my apartment door. "Break down the door!" she shrieked. "This is our son's apartment." She was directing my father and brother, who were with her. They had no idea I was standing just inside, listening to every word, still trembling from the humiliation they'd inflicted on me just yesterday at our family gathering. The look on their faces when I finally flung that door open, it was pure terror. They screamed, and what they saw in my hands, well, that's where the real story begins. But first, if you're watching, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if anything in my story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. I share more stories about standing up to toxic family dynamics, and believe me, there's a lot more to tell. Now, to truly understand why my family was trying to smash their way into my home, you need to understand the people who raised me. I grew up in a picturesque suburban home just outside Chicago. You know the kind, perfect landscaping, holiday decorations that made the neighbors green with envy. But behind that polished front door, our family was obsessed with control. My father, George Williams, was the ringleader. He built a successful insurance business from nothing. And honestly, his determination and work ethic could have been admirable. But they weren't. They came bundled with this unshakable belief that he knew what was best for absolutely everyone in his orbit. Questioning him? That was a direct challenge to his authority. He planned our lives with the same ruthless precision he used to build his business empire, leaving absolutely no room for our own dreams, our own desires. Then there was my mother, Evelyn. She was a master, an absolute artist of passive aggression. She'd never directly defy my father, no. Instead, she'd use guilt and emotional manipulation with surgical precision. "I just want what's best for you," she'd coo, right after she'd completely undermined my confidence. Her favorite line, whenever I dared to object to anything, was always, "One day you'll thank us for this." Well, spoiler alert, I'm still waiting for that day to come. And my brother, Nathan, 3 years older, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. He was Dad's shadow, mirroring him in every single way, from his shiny business degree to his infuriatingly condescending attitude towards me. Dad controlled with commands. Nathan controlled with mockery and dismissal. "Don't be so dramatic, Jelena," became his catchphrase whenever I dared to express any genuine feeling. For my parents, status was everything. Our family's reputation in the community? It was meticulously cultivated, like the prize roses in our front yard. Mom volunteered for every church committee. Dad donated generously to every local charity. And we all had to look perfect, act perfect, especially in public. The pressure was absolutely suffocating. My education wasn't about learning for myself. It was about achieving things that reflected well on them. In high school, when I discovered a genuine artistic talent, my parents just dismissed it as a hobby. "Art won't pay the bills," my father declared before, of course, steering me straight into business school. I dutifully enrolled in the marketing program at the university they chose, watching my art school dreams fade away. Even my appearance wasn't my own. My mother scheduled my haircuts, carefully selected my clothes, and constantly, relentlessly criticized my weight. "No one will take you seriously looking like that," she'd say, if I dared to pick an outfit she disapproved of. By the time I was 20, I had completely lost any sense of my own style, my own preferences. I had become a mannequin for their expectations. Dating? Oh, that was another battlefield entirely. Any boy I dared to bring home faced an intense interrogation from my father. Background, career prospects, everything. And Nathan? He'd follow up later, telling me which ones weren't good enough for our family. My first serious college boyfriend, Daniel, was quickly deemed unsuitable because his parents were just teachers, not professionals. That relationship withered and died after months of my parents' insidious, subtle sabotage. Their control even seeped into my finances. Yes, they paid for my education, but they never, ever let me forget it. We invest in your future because we love you, they'd say. But that investment came with so many strings. They insisted on access to my bank accounts well into my 20s. Every single purchase I made was scrutinized, judged, and often criticized. My very first attempt at independence? That came right after college graduation. I found a marketing job at a small firm. Anything to avoid joining my father's company, which was, of course, what they expected. The fallout was immediate. "After all we've done for you," my mother wailed over the phone, her voice thick with manufactured hurt. My father was more direct, more cutting. "You're making a mistake that will cost you your future." For weeks, family dinners became excruciating tribunals. My career choice was dissected, criticized, and condemned. Nathan, naturally, joined in, explaining how I was throwing away all the connections and security our family offered. Their united front was relentless. It wore me down. And just 6 months later, utterly exhausted, I resigned and took a position at my father's company. This pattern, this suffocating cycle, it just continued for years. Every single attempt I made to establish independence was met with fierce resistance. If I wanted to take a vacation alone, my mother would suddenly develop mysterious health concerns that absolutely required my presence. If I even dared to mention moving into my own place, my father would instantly pull up spreadsheets, meticulously demonstrating why it made more financial sense to continue living at home. By 30, I was still in my childhood bedroom, still working for my father, and frankly, feeling like a teenager despite my age. I had savings, but I was terrified to use them. I had dreams, but I was too afraid to pursue them. From the outside, my life looked successful, enviable even. But inside, I felt utterly, completely empty. My college friends were getting married, having children, building careers they chose. I had financial security, yes, but I had absolutely no freedom. The turning point, the moment everything shifted, happened during a therapy session. I'd started going secretly, of course. My therapist, Dr. Tuda Morris, asked me a simple question, but it changed everything. "Whose life are you living, Jelena?" I had no answer, because in that moment, I realized I wasn't living my life at all. I was living my parents' vision for my life, not my own. That question haunted me for weeks, digging its way into my soul, until I finally made the decision to move out. At 31 years old, I was going to have my own place for the very first time, no matter what. Regardless of the consequences, I found an apartment, signed a lease without telling my family, and braced myself for the inevitable confrontation. Finding that apartment, it felt like falling in love. It wasn't perfect, not by conventional standards. It was a one-bedroom walk-up in an older building, creaky floors, slightly outdated appliances. But the massive windows in the living room, they flooded the space with natural light, making it absolutely perfect for my long-abandoned painting. The built-in bookshelves could finally display all the books my parents considered wastes of time. And there was this small balcony overlooking a quiet courtyard, a peaceful retreat just for me. Most importantly, more than anything else, it was truly, completely mine. I signed the lease on a Tuesday, and then I delivered the news to my family the following Sunday during our mandatory family dinner. Their reaction? Exactly what I'd expected. My father placed his fork down with deliberate, dramatic slowness. An apartment at those prices? That's financially irresponsible, Jelena. My mother's eyes instantly welled up with tears. "But why would you want to leave home? Don't we take good care of you?" Nathan just scoffed. "Is this another one of your independence phases? Remember when you wanted to study abroad in college?" Even though I'd prepared myself, I felt my resolve wavering. That's when Dr. Morris's words about setting boundaries echoed in my mind. Taking a deep breath, I looked them all in the eye. "I've signed the lease. I'm moving next week. I'd love your support, but I'm doing this regardless." I said it. The words felt foreign, exhilarating. Their initial shock soon morphed into what I call their helping phase. If they couldn't stop my independence, they'd simply control it instead. My father immediately offered to help with the rent, a proposition I politely but firmly declined. My mother insisted on coming with me to buy furniture, subtly, relentlessly, steering me towards pieces that perfectly matched their home, not my taste at all. Nathan volunteered to handle the moving arrangements, of course trying to schedule everything around his convenience, not mine. But I moved in. Despite their interference, I did it. That first night alone in my new place, I felt this strange mix of terror and pure exhilaration. I ordered takeout, the kind my mother would absolutely disapprove of, sat on the floor since my furniture hadn't arrived yet, and just cried. Tears of pure relief. That night, I slept better than I had in years. That peaceful feeling? It lasted exactly 3 days. Then my parents showed up unannounced, of course, armed with housewarming gifts and, naturally, a plethora of opinions. My mother marched through the apartment, running her finger over surfaces, checking for dust, and casually rearranging the few decorations I'd carefully placed. My father started measuring the windows, declaring he'd order proper blinds to replace the ones that came with the apartment. As they were leaving, he announced, "You need to give us a key, Jelena, for emergencies." I reluctantly agreed, rationalizing that it might ease their anxiety about me living alone. While I didn't expect, what I couldn't have imagined was just how broadly they would define emergency. Soon, my mother started dropping by while I was at work, leaving home-cooked meals and cleaning. I'd come home to find my laundry folded in a way I didn't recognize, my bed made differently, and things moved to where she thought they belonged. My father used his key to let in maintenance people he'd hired, without ever consulting me, resulting in new light fixtures I hadn't chosen and absolutely didn't want. But the most invasive incident? That happened when I came home early from work with a debilitating migraine. I walked into my apartment to find my parents and Nathan, along with an interior designer. They had tape measures and fabric swatches spread all over my living room. "Surprise," my mother chirped, completely oblivious to my shock. "We're giving your apartment a proper makeover." This designer did the Henderson's lake house. The designer looked incredibly uncomfortable while I struggled, really struggled, to maintain my composure. "I didn't ask for a makeover." I managed my voice tight. "This is my home, and I like it as it is." My father just waved away my objection as if swatting a fly. "You don't know what good design is, honey. Let the professionals handle this." That evening, after they finally left, I sat in my living room, feeling utterly violated. They had entered my space without permission, making decisions about my home without my consent. The parallels to how they had always treated my life choices were stark, impossible to ignore. It was my neighbor, Olivia, who really helped me see the situation clearly. We'd met in the hallway when I was struggling with groceries, and she'd offered to help. Over a thank you cup of coffee, I found myself spilling everything, telling her about my family's surprise redecorating committee. Olivia, a social worker about 10 years my senior, listened without a hint of judgment before speaking. "Jelena, what you're describing sounds like they don't respect your boundaries. Having a key doesn't mean they can just waltz in whenever they want. They're just trying to help." I mumbled, automatically repeating the excuse I'd used for years, the mantra of my life. "Is it helping if it makes you uncomfortable in your own home?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. "Help should make your life better, not make you feel invaded." That conversation was another monumental turning point. The very next day, I changed the locks on my apartment door. I didn't tell my family immediately. I knew the confrontation would be intense. Instead, I used that time to prepare myself emotionally with Dr. Morris's guidance. Setting boundaries isn't about punishing them, Dr. Morris explained during our session. It's about protecting yourself and establishing healthy relationships. But what if they never accept my boundaries? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. She looked at me kindly. "Then you'll have information about what kind of relationship is truly possible with them. Not everyone can adapt to healthy boundaries, especially if they're used to having complete control." The inevitable confrontation arrived soon enough. My mother tried to let herself in while I was home, and found her key simply didn't work. Her confused jiggling of the doorknob was quickly followed by frantic knocking. When I finally opened the door, her expression morphed from confusion to deep, wounded hurt. "My key doesn't work, Jelena," she said, her voice laced with accusation. Is something wrong with your lock? I took a deep, steadying breath. I changed the locks, Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I should have told you, but I needed to make a point. You and Dad have been coming in without my permission, and that needs to stop. The hurt in her eyes evaporated, instantly replaced by indignation. Without permission? We are parents. We don't need permission to look after our daughter. I met her gaze. I'm 32 years old, Mom. I don't need looking after. And yes, you absolutely do need permission to enter my home. That conversation ignited a Cold War that lasted for weeks. My parents' calls became less frequent, but Nathan stepped up, taking on a role of convincing me I was overreacting. They're just trying to make your place livable, he said during one call. You've always been so sensitive. Despite the constant tension, I held my ground. Each day in my apartment felt like a small victory for my independence. I painted the living room a soft, calming blue, a color my mother would absolutely loathe. I bought eclectic furniture from thrift stores, ignoring the high-end retailers my parents preferred. I hung my own artwork on the walls, pieces I'd created in secret over the years. My confidence blossomed, growing right alongside my developing sense of personal style. I started reconnecting with college friends, people I'd lost touch with during my years of family-enforced isolation. I joined a local art class, painting regularly again. I even started dating for the first time without having to run potential partners through my family's grueling approval system. 6 months into my independent life, I had truly felt like a different person. My apartment had become a true reflection of who I was, not who my family wanted me to be. The only lingering shadow over my new life was the unresolved, simmering tension with my family. It was building, slowly but surely, towards an explosion no one could have possibly predicted. By the way, if you're still with me on this wild ride, and I really hope you are, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories are coming. Trust me. Aunt Patricia's 60th birthday celebration had been circled on the family calendar for months. As my mother's only sister, Aunt Patricia held a very special place in our family hierarchy, and her milestone birthday absolutely demanded a gathering of the entire extended family. Under normal circumstances, I would have dreaded it, knowing it meant hours of forced, performative family harmony. But after 6 months of establishing my independence, I felt stronger, more capable of navigating those intense family dynamics without completely losing myself. I chose my outfit carefully that morning, a navy blue dress that felt professional yet still expressed my personal style. I wore jewelry I'd bought for myself, not the pearls my mother insisted were the only appropriate accessory for family functions. I drove to Aunt Patricia's suburban home, feeling a knot of nerves, but determined to maintain my boundaries. The first hour actually went surprisingly well. I reconnected with cousins I genuinely enjoyed, but rarely saw outside of these obligatory gatherings. My cousin, Sophia, even commented on how happy I looked. Uncle David asked about my apartment with what seemed like genuine interest, not judgment. Even Aunt Patricia noticed the change in me, pulling me aside to whisper, "There's something different about you, Jelena. You seem lighter." I began to relax, foolishly thinking perhaps my fears had been overblown. Maybe, just maybe, my family could accept the new, more independent me. That hope, however, died a very quick and painful death. My father clinked his glass to gather everyone's attention during lunch. "While we're all together," he announced, his voice booming with the confidence of a man who always controlled the room, "I wanted to share some exciting news about Jelena's apartment." My blood ran cold. All eyes snapped towards me. I had absolutely no idea what he was about to say, and that, in itself, was alarming enough. Evelyn and I have decided to give Jelena's apartment a complete renovation. As a surprise, he beamed, as if he'd just announced he'd cured cancer. "We've hired Wilson Designs, the same firm that did the Johnson's Lake House." My mother then jumped in, practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "We've already ordered new furniture and the painters start Monday. Wait until you see the plans." She pulled out her phone, immediately beginning to show photos to nearby relatives. With growing horror, a sick feeling rising in my stomach, I realized she was showing pictures of my apartment. Photos taken without my knowledge during their unannounced visits. My private space, my sanctuary, was being paraded around, displayed for the entire family to evaluate and critique. I was incandescent with rage. The current furniture is so eclectic, my mother continued, her tone diplomatically vague, which everyone at the table immediately recognized as her code for cheap and tasteless. Nathan, ever the helpful brother, chimed in. Jelina's always had unique taste. Remember her purple hair phase in high school? The family chuckled, and I felt a hot flush creep up my neck. I was 16 again, my choices mocked as immature phases rather than genuine expressions of my identity. I haven't agreed to any renovation, I said, my voice barely a whisper, trembling slightly. This is the first I'm hearing about it. My father, completely dismissive, waved away my comment as if swatting a bothersome fly. It's a surprise, honey. That's why we didn't tell you. A surprise, I retorted, feeling my carefully constructed composure crack and shatter. Implies something the person would want. I don't want strangers in my apartment, making changes I haven't approved. The table went completely silent. The tension was thick, palpable. My mother's smile remained fixed, painted on, but her eyes hardened, turning to chips of ice. Jelina, this isn't the time or place to discuss this. You brought it up in front of everyone. I pointed out, my voice gaining strength. When would be a better time to discuss changes to my home than when you announced them publicly? My father's expression shifted, hardening into that familiar stern look, the one that had silenced me countless times throughout my childhood. We're trying to help you create a proper living space, he declared, his voice cutting. The apartment looks like a college dorm room. It looks like me, I shot back, my voice to my own surprise, growing stronger, steadier. It reflects who I am, not who you want me to be. Aunt Patricia, bless her, tried to diffuse the tension. The cake is ready. Shall we move to the living room? But something inside me had broken open. Years of suppressed feelings were finally finding their voice. I changed the locks for a reason. I practically shouted. I don't want you coming into my space without permission. And I certainly don't want you renovating it without my consent. The shocked silence that fell over the table made me realize just how rarely anyone dared to contradict my father in public. My cousins suddenly found their plates incredibly fascinating. Uncle David cleared his throat uncomfortably. My mother's voice was tight, brittle with controlled anger. Jelina, you're making a scene at your aunt's birthday. I'm not the one who brought up renovating someone else's home without their permission. I retorted. Nathan, of course, jumped in, his tone dripping with condescension. Typical Jelina drama. They're trying to help you, and you're acting like they committed a crime. I locked eyes with him. Entering someone's home without permission is a crime. It's called breaking and entering. My father stood up, his face flushed, a vein throbbing in his temple. That's enough. We have never broken into your apartment. We had a key I never should have given you. I countered, standing now, 2 years of therapy finally giving me the strength to stand my ground. Because you abused the privilege. My apartment is my space, not an extension of your house, not a project for you to fix. Aunt Patricia stepped in, her voice gentle but firm, trying to quell the storm. George, Evelyn, perhaps this is a discussion for another time. My father nodded stiffly, his jaw clenched in barely controlled fury. Of course, Patricia. I apologize for the disruption. The conversation then, awkwardly, shifted to safer topics, but the damage was done. I felt the heavy weight of disapproving glances from relatives who clearly believed I had disrespected my parents. But I also caught subtle nods of support and looks of sympathy from others. For the first time, the family had witnessed something rarely seen in our carefully controlled public image. Authentic, raw conflict. I stayed through the cake cutting, determined not to cause any further disruption to Aunt Patricia's celebration. But the joy had completely drained out of the day. As I prepared to leave, my mother cornered me in the hallway. We'll discuss this at your apartment later, she said, her tone a clear command, not a suggestion. No, I replied simply, my voice unwavering. If you want to talk, call first and ask if you can visit. I won't open the door otherwise. Her eyes widened in shock at my direct refusal. This behavior needs to stop, Jelena. Your father and I have had enough. So have I said, surprising even myself with my calm. That's why I'm setting boundaries. I left the gathering knowing the confrontation wasn't over, merely postponed. The drive home gave me time to steel myself for what I knew would come next. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have fully prepared me for my family's reaction to my newfound independence. I barely had time to change into comfortable clothes when the buzzer to my apartment rang. I peered through the peephole and saw them. My parents and Nathan, standing in the hallway, their faces a mixture of simmering anger and grim determination. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door, but stood firmly in the doorway, blocking their entry, making it abundantly clear I wasn't inviting them in. "May I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady calm. "Don't be ridiculous, Jelena. Let us in. We need to talk," my father demanded, already attempting to step forward. I held my ground. I told Mom I wanted advance notice before visits. "This isn't a good time." My mother's face crumpled instantly into that familiar hurt expression, the one that had manipulated me for years. "After what you did at Patricia's party, you going to turn us away at the door? Do you have any idea how embarrassed we were?" "You embarrassed yourselves," I shot back, surprised by my own composure, "by announcing renovation plans for my apartment without my consent." Nathan stepped forward, using his height, his presence, to try and intimidate me. "The contractors are downstairs, waiting. Dad paid a premium for them to start today. Are you really going to waste thousands of dollars because of your sudden need for independence?" I looked past them, down the hall, and there they were, two men in paint-splattered clothes, standing awkwardly by the building's entrance. Nathan wasn't bluffing. They had actually brought contractors. Without my agreement. The full weight of their arrogance, their complete disregard for me, hit me hard, and it solidified my resolve. "Yes, I stated, my voice clear. I never asked for renovations. I never agreed to renovations. Those men have no right to enter my home." My father's face went crimson, a dangerous sign I recognized from childhood. "This isn't about rights, Jelena. This is about what's best for you. Your apartment looks like a thrift store exploded in it. What will people think?" "I don't care what people think," I cried, the words bursting out. "I care what I think, and I love my apartment exactly as it is." "This rebellion has gone on long enough," my father continued, his voice rising, loud enough that a neighbor down the hall actually opened their door slightly. "If you're going to live independently, you need to do it properly. That means a professionally designed living space." "No, Dad," I retorted. "Living independently means making my own choices about my space, my time, and my life. It means not having to justify my decisions to you or anyone else." My mother's strategy then shifted from hurt to tears. Another familiar, manipulative tactic. "We just want to help you, Jelena. That's all we've ever wanted. Why are you pushing us away? It's breaking my heart." In the past, those tears would have shattered my resolve, reduced me to a pile of guilt. Today, they only strengthened it. "Mom, I appreciate that you think you want to help, but real help would be respecting my wishes. You don't know what you want." Nathan interjected, his voice dripping with superiority. "You never have. Remember when you wanted to be a painter? How would that have paid your bills?" "I still paint, Nathan," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "My apartment is full of my artwork that you've apparently never noticed during your visits. And I pay my bills just fine with my marketing job." My father impatiently checked his watch. "Enough of this nonsense. The contractors are on the clock. Let us in so they can start work." "No," I said firmly. "Please tell them to leave. I won't be responsible for their time, since I never hired them." Just then, the door across the hall opened, and my neighbor Olivia stepped out, ostensibly to check her mail, but clearly responding to the escalating voices. "Everything okay, Jelena?" she asked, giving my family a pointed, disapproving look. My father, ever so conscious of appearances, instantly lowered his voice. "This is a family matter. It's fine, Olivia. My family was just leaving," I added, grateful beyond words for her presence. We're not leaving until this is resolved, my mother insisted, her voice tight. Jelena, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, I countered. I am an adult with my own living space that I pay for. I decide what happens in it. My father's patience finally snapped. If you want to be so independent, Jelena, he snarled, then perhaps you should be fully independent. No more family support. No safety net. If that's your choice, I replied, the words painful but utterly necessary. I accept it. You can't be serious, my mother gasped. George, she doesn't mean that. I do mean it, I stated, looking her straight in the eye. I would rather live without your financial support than with your constant control. Nathan stepped even closer, his voice low and threatening, trying to loom over me. You're making a huge mistake, Jelena. You've always been dramatic, but this is taking it too far. The only mistake I made, I replied, standing my ground, unmoving despite his intimidating stance, was not setting boundaries sooner. My father, with a theatrical flourish, pulled out his wallet and removed a credit card with my name on it, one they'd given me for emergencies, but that I'd deliberately not used since moving out. He held it up, a symbol of his power, before tucking it back into his wallet. When you come to your senses, let us know. Until then, you're on your own. I already am, I said quietly, a profound sense of peace washing over me. My mother made one last, desperate attempt, her voice cracking, breaking. Please, Jelena, let us help you. Let us in. Looking into her pleading eyes, I felt a momentary tremor in my resolve. The lifetime habit of giving in, of keeping the peace, fought hard against my newfound strength. But then, I remembered. The photos she had shown everyone. The invasion of my privacy. The complete and utter disregard for my wishes. I love you, Mom. I said the words heavy, but no. Please, respect my decision. This isn't over, my father said ominously as he finally turned to leave. We'll be back tomorrow, and I expect a more reasonable attitude. Don't come without calling first. I reminded them, my voice firm. And I expect you to respect my decision, even if you don't agree with it. Nathan was the last to leave, lingering in the doorway. He looked at me, a strange mix of emotions in his eyes. You know they'll never give up, right? This little independence game will end eventually. It always does. This isn't a game, Nathan. I reply, my voice steady. This is my life. After they finally left, I closed the door and leaned against it, my legs suddenly weak beneath me. The confrontation had drained every ounce of energy, but underneath the exhaustion, there was a quiet, fierce sense of pride. I had held my boundary. Despite their pressure, I had done it. From next door, Olivia's voice drifted. I heard most of that. Are you okay? I invited her in for tea, incredibly grateful for a friendly presence after the emotional upheaval. They've never taken no for an answer before, I told her, my voice weary. I don't think they'll start now. Then you need to be prepared, she said, her usual pragmatism a comfort. First, let's change your locks again. I know a locksmith who can come today. By evening, I had new locks installed, but the knot of anxiety in my stomach refused to ease. My father's ominous parting words echoed in my mind. This isn't over. Knowing my family, I suspected they would escalate rather than accept my boundary. I just didn't realize how far they would actually go. The pounding on my door jolted me awake at 6:01 in the morning. Disoriented, groggy, I fumbled for my phone to check the time, wondering who on earth could be at my door so early. The answer came in my mother's shrill voice, piercing through the wooden door. Jelena, open this door immediately. Fully awake now, adrenaline surging, I pulled on my robe and moved towards the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the peephole, I could clearly see my parents and Nathan in the hallway, their faces set in grim, determined expressions. Jelena, we know you're in there. Open up. My father's commanding voice immediately brought back a lifetime of automatic obedience. But this time, I resisted the urge to comply. What are you doing here so early? I called through the door. I told you to call before coming over. This has gone far enough, my father replied, his voice impatient. Your mother is worried sick about you. Open the door so we can talk properly. I'm fine, I shot back, and I'm not opening the door. Please leave and call me later if you want to talk. There was a low, murmured conversation I couldn't quite make out. Then my mother's voice again, this time with a theatrical quaver that sounded utterly rehearsed. Jelena, honey, we're concerned about your mental health. This behavior isn't like you. The implication was crystal clear and terrifying. They were framing my independence, my boundaries, as a mental health crisis. I'd heard of families using this tactic to regain control over their adult children, and the chilling realization that mine might actually go this far sent a cold wave of dread through me. My mental health is fine, I called back, trying to project calm. In fact, it's better than it's been in years. My therapist can confirm that. Therapist, my mother's genuine shock, her indignation, was palpable even through the solid wood door. You've been seeing a therapist without telling us. Before I could respond, I heard my father's impatient, furious voice. This is ridiculous. Nathan, go down to the car and get the tool bag. The implication of his words hit me like a physical blow. A sudden, sickening realization. They were planning to force their way in. My hand shaking, I picked up my phone and silently dialed 911. Speaking in a hushed whisper, so they wouldn't hear me, I told the dispatcher, I need police assistance. My family is threatening to break into my apartment. I gave my address, and the dispatcher assured me officers would be there shortly, advising me to stay on the line. I kept the call active, but muted my end so I could listen to what was happening in the hallway. I can't believe it's come to this. I heard my mother wail. What will the neighbors think? My father, still calm, replied, they'll think we're concerned parents checking on our daughter. No one would blame us for that. Then, Nathan's voice with a rare, fleeting note of uncertainty. Are you sure about this, Dad? She's left us no choice, my father declared, his voice hard. Break down the door. This is our son's apartment. His bizarre statement confused me for a moment, until I realized he was twisting the narrative, trying to pretend this was somehow Nathan's place that I was just occupying. The sheer level of their delusion shocked me to my core. I heard Nathan's return, followed by the unmistakable metallic sound of tools being handled. The dispatcher on the phone asked if I was still there. I unmuted, my voice a strained whisper. They have tools. I think they're actually going to try to break in. The full, terrifying reality of the situation hit me. Officers are 3 minutes out, the dispatcher assured me. Stay on the line. I heard a scraping sound at the doorframe. They were actually doing it, actively attempting to force entry into my home. A lifetime of compliance and fear battled fiercely with the newfound strength I had been painstakingly building. In that moment, a decision formed. I had been recording the entire exchange on my phone as evidence. But I had something else, something they couldn't expect. Just yesterday, after their visit, I'd contacted a lawyer friend who had helped me file for an emergency temporary restraining order based on her constant harassment and threats. Thanks to my friend's connections, the paperwork had been processed with astonishing speed. The official documents had been delivered late last night. The sound of metal against my doorframe grew more insistent. I could hear my mother's anxious, whispered encouragements, and my father's clipped directions to Nathan about where to apply pressure with what I now knew was a crowbar. Making a split-second decision, I positioned myself to the side of the door, the restraining order clutched in one hand, my phone, still recording, in the other. In one swift, decisive motion, I unlocked the door and pulled it open, staying carefully to the side, just in case they try to rush in. The sudden opening of the door completely caught them off guard. Nathan stumbled forward, and there it was, unmistakable, a crowbar in his hands. My father's face registered pure shock, then blazing anger. But it was my mother's reaction that would be forever etched in my memory. As her eyes fell on the official documents in my hand, and then to the phone, clearly recording their actions, her face transformed. The righteous concern vanished, replaced by sheer, unadulterated horror. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, backing away as if I were the threat, not them. Defending my home from intruders, I replied calmly, holding up the restraining order for them to see. "This is a temporary restraining order, prohibiting all of you from coming within 100 feet of me or my residence." You are currently in violation of that order, and you're being recorded attempting to break into my apartment with a crowbar. My father lunged forward, his hand outstretched, reaching for my phone. Give me that. You're not recording anything. I stepped back further into my doorway, out of his reach. Everything has already been uploaded to cloud storage. Breaking my phone won't delete the evidence. Nathan stood there, frozen, the crowbar still in his hand, his expression shifting from confusion to the dawning realization of the serious legal trouble they were now in. This is insane, my father sputtered, his voice cracking. We're your parents. We have every right to check on you. No, you don't. I counter, my voice firm. Not by breaking down my door. Not after I've explicitly told you to leave. Just then, the elevator at the end of the hall dinged. Officer Garcia stepped out, her hand resting cautiously near her weapon, her eyes assessing the chaotic scene. The sight of Nathan holding a crowbar immediately put her on high alert. Put that down. Slowly, she instructed Nathan, her voice calm but authoritative. He complied instantly, placing the crowbar on the floor. Officer, there's been a misunderstanding, my father began, effortlessly slipping into the charming, respectable persona he always used with authorities. We're just concerned parents checking on our daughter. Officer Garcia looked to me for confirmation. I shook my head and, with a steady hand, held out the restraining order for her to inspect. I have a temporary restraining order against all three of them. They were attempting to break into my apartment after threatening to return yesterday, when I refused to let them in. The officer reviewed the paperwork, then nodded. This appears to be in order. Do you have evidence of the break-in attempt? I held up my phone. I recorded everything, including their statements about breaking down the door. What followed was absolutely surreal. The family that had controlled every single aspect of my life for 3 decades was now temporarily detained in the hallway of my apartment building. Officer Garcia took statements from all of us, and a second officer soon arrived to assist. My neighbor, Olivia, emerged from her apartment, confirming she had witnessed yesterday's confrontation and heard this morning's disturbance. My parents' version of events painted me as unstable, claiming they were worried about my mental health after my erratic behavior at the family gathering. Nathan, though looking increasingly uncomfortable, backed their story. But Officer Garcia wasn't buying it. If you're concerned about her welfare, why not call for a wellness check from the police? She asked, quite reasonably. We didn't want to embarrass her, my mother replied, the breathtaking irony of her statement completely lost on her as she stood in a public hallway, having just screamed and attempted to break down my door. As Officer Garcia spoke with my parents, the second officer pulled me aside. Do you feel safe in your apartment? He asked gently. Is there somewhere else you can stay tonight? I feel safe here, I assured him, my voice firm. This is my home, and I'm not leaving because of their behavior. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 45 minutes, Officer Garcia informed my parents and Nathan that they would need to come to the station to give formal statements regarding the attempted break-in. The restraining order would be strictly enforced, meaning they could not come near my apartment or workplace. This is outrageous, my father protested, his face contorted. We've done nothing wrong, sir. Attempting to force entry into someone's residence with a crowbar is breaking and entering, restraining order or not. Officer Garcia explained patiently. You're fortunate your daughter is willing to let the restraining order violation be your only consequence today. As they were escorted towards the elevator, my mother turned back, tears streaming down her face. How could you do this to us, Jelena? Your own family. That question, the one that had controlled me for years, finally had no power over me. I'm not doing anything to you, I replied, my voice clear and strong. I'm protecting myself. After they finally left, I sat on my couch in stunned silence, the adrenaline slowly, mercifully draining from my system. The morning sun filtered through my curtains, illuminating the apartment that had become so utterly worth fighting for. Not because of its physical attributes, but because it represented something infinitely precious, my right to make my own choices. Officer Garcia returned to get additional details for her report. Family situations can be the most difficult, she said sympathetically. Do you have support people you could talk to? I thought of Olivia next door, of Dr. Morris, of the friends I had reconnected with over the past months. Yes, I said, a small smile touching my lips. Yes, I do. I'm not alone. As she left, she handed me her card. Call if they come back or contact you against the order. We take violations seriously. After she left, I walked slowly through my apartment, touching the furniture I had chosen, gazing at the artwork I had created, feeling the space that was undeniably, finally mine. For the first time, I truly understood that the morning's events weren't just about an apartment. They were about claiming my entire life as my own. The days following the break-in attempt took on a surreal quality. I kept expecting to wake up and find it had all been a dream, that I had only imagined standing up to my family so definitively. But the official police report on my coffee table and the temporary restraining order posted proudly on my refrigerator were tangible, undeniable reminders that everything had irrevocably changed. The first 24 hours passed in relative quiet. Then, my phone began lighting up. Messages and calls, not from my immediate family, who were legally prohibited from contacting me, but from extended relatives. They had been enlisted in the relentless campaign to bring me back into the fold. Your mother is devastated, Jelena, Aunt Patricia said when I answered her call, her voice thick with manufactured concern. She hasn't stopped crying since they came home from the police station. I'm sorry she's upset. I replied carefully, but they tried to break into my apartment with a crowbar. They were worried about you. George says you've been acting erratically, making wild accusations. He thinks you might need professional help. The character assassination had begun, just as Dr. Morris had warned me it might. I'm getting professional help, Aunt Patricia, I said, my voice steady. I've been seeing a therapist for months, and she's helping me establish healthy boundaries. Boundaries with your own parents. That's not how family works, Jelena. It's how healthy families work, I countered. And I'm not making accusations. I have recordings of everything that happened. Similar conversations played out with other relatives over and over. Some, like Uncle David, were more receptive to my side of the story. I always thought George was too controlling, he admitted, a rare moment of honesty. But breaking and entering, that's taking it to another level. The family divide became starker, clearer with each passing call. Those who had themselves experienced my father's controlling nature were more understanding, more empathetic. But those who benefited from their association with him, or who shared his authoritarian views, unequivocally condemned my actions as ungrateful and rebellious. 3 days after the terrifying incident, an email landed in my inbox. It was from my father's attorney, Robert Clean, a man I'd known since childhood as a family friend. The formal legal language couldn't mask the implicit threat. They were considering legal action against me for defamation and false reporting, claiming I had misrepresented the situation to the police. I immediately forwarded the email to my own attorney, Jessica Winters, the incredible woman who had helped me secure the restraining order. Her response was immediate and, thank goodness, profoundly reassuring. They have no case, Jelena. You have recordings, witnesses, and police reports documenting their behavior. This is purely an intimidation tactic. She was right, of course, but knowing the legal threat was empty didn't make it any less stressful. I had been raised to fear my father's disapproval, and that deep-seated conditioning didn't just vanish overnight. Each email notification made my heart pound. Each unknown phone number triggered a fresh wave of anxiety about what new pressure tactic they might be employing. A week after the incident, my brother Nathan contacted me through a mutual friend, asking to meet a neutral location. Against Jessica's advice, I agreed, choosing a busy coffee shop where I felt safe from both physical intimidation and potential scenes. Nathan looked tired when he arrived, his usual confident swagger temporarily subdued. He ordered coffee and sat across from me, studying my face as if searching for signs of his sister he recognized. You've really done it this time, he began, but without his usual condescension. Dads had to call in favors all over town to contain this. Do you have any idea how this looks? Like parents who couldn't control their adult daughter, so they tried to break into her apartment? I suggested mildly. He winced. It wasn't supposed to go that way. They were genuinely worried about you. Were you worried too, Nathan? I pressed, my gaze steady. Is that why you brought a crowbar to my door at 6 in the morning? He actually had the grace to look ashamed. Dad insisted we needed to check on you. I didn't think it would go that far, but you know how he gets when he's made up his mind. I do know, I said softly, and that's exactly why I got the restraining order. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. What's the end game here, Jelena? You can't seriously think you can maintain this separation forever. We're family. The end game, I explained, is a relationship based on mutual respect rather than control. If that's not possible, then maybe separation is the only option. They'll never accept that, he warned, shaking his head. Mom's a wreck, and Dad's obsessed with damage control. This is consuming their lives. Their reaction isn't my responsibility, I said, repeating a phrase Dr. Morris had taught me, a lifeline. They made choices that led to this situation. Nathan shook his head in disbelief. When did you get so cold? Setting boundaries isn't cold, Nathan. It's healthy. Maybe someday you'll set some of your own. The look he gave me was a complex mix of anger, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Perhaps curiosity. We finished our coffee in uncomfortable silence before he stood to leave. They want you to drop the restraining order, he said finally, as if an afterthought. As a gesture of good faith. Good faith, I replied, meeting his gaze, would be respecting my boundaries without legal enforcement. Until I see evidence of that, the order stays in place. As the weeks stretched into months, the legal maneuvering continued, relentless. My parents, with their considerable resources and connections, deployed them in increasingly concerning ways. I discovered they had contacted my employer, expressing concerns about my mental health that could impact my work performance. Fortunately, my direct supervisor, Maria, was far more impressed by my professionalism than by my parents' thinly veiled insinuations. Your work speaks for itself, Jelena, she assured me during a difficult, candid conversation. Whatever's happening in your personal life isn't affecting your performance. The financial consequences of my stand became painfully apparent when I discovered my parents had been secretly paying several of my subscription services and insurance premiums. These suddenly stopped, requiring me to quickly establish new accounts and payment methods. My health insurance, which had been part of their family plan, was canceled without notice, forcing me to navigate the complicated, frustrating process of finding new coverage. But the most painful consequence was the loss of relationships with family members who unquestioningly sided with my parents. Cousins I had grown up with stopped returning my calls. Holiday invitations, once obligatory, were conspicuously absent. The family narrative being meticulously constructed painted me as unstable, ungrateful, and easily swayed by radical ideas from therapy. But for every relationship lost, I seemed to gain or strengthen another. Aunt Susan, my father's sister, who had always maintained a respectful distance from family drama, unexpectedly reached out with genuine support. Your father was always controlling. Even as a child, she confided over lunch at a restaurant far from any family haunts. Our parents encouraged it in him, but discouraged it in me. What you're doing takes courage, Jelena. My friendship with Olivia deepened into a bond of unwavering support and emotional understanding. Through her, I met others who had navigated similarly difficult family dynamics, establishing healthier relationships, or when necessary, respectful distance. The temporary restraining order became permanent after a court hearing where the recordings of the break-in attempt were played. My parents and Nathan were present, represented by expensive attorneys who argued, unsuccessfully, that their actions were motivated by concern rather than control. The judge was completely unimpressed. Concern for an adult child's welfare does not justify attempted forcible entry into their residence, she stated firmly. The court finds sufficient evidence to grant a permanent restraining order. Leaving the courthouse, I felt a complex, swirling mixture of relief and grief. The legal victory provided protection, yes, but it also formalized the complete rupture in my family. As I walked to my car, I noticed my mother standing alone near the courthouse steps, my father and their attorney deep in conversation, several yards away. For a moment, our eyes met, and in hers, I saw something unfamiliar, something that wasn't anger or manipulation. It was confusion, as if she truly couldn't comprehend how we had reached this painful point. I looked away first, unable to bear the weight of that confusion. In that moment, I realized that my parents' controlling behavior wasn't just about power. It was about their deep, fundamental inability to accommodate my valid needs and rights. Their entire worldview simply couldn't allow for my independence without interpreting it as a direct, personal rejection. The financial challenges of true independence were significant, I won't lie. Without the safety net my family had always provided, I had to build an emergency fund from scratch and plan meticulously for every single expense. I picked up freelance marketing projects to supplement my income, learning to be more intentional, more mindful about my spending. These challenges were stressful, yes, but they were also incredibly empowering. Each bill paid with my own hard-earned money was a powerful confirmation of my capability, my resilience. 6 months after the break-in attempt, I started attending a support group for adults dealing with controlling family relationships, something Dr. Morris had gently encouraged. Sharing my story with others who truly understood, who got it, was healing in a way individual therapy alone couldn't provide. The group members instantly recognized the manipulation tactics, the guilt induction, the threats disguised as concern. No one questioned why I couldn't just get along with my family or suggested I was overreacting. The hardest part, I told the group during one session, my voice thick with emotion, is grieving the relationship I wished I had while setting boundaries with the relationship I actually have. Karen, a woman in her 50s who had been estranged from her own parents for decades, nodded in deep understanding. That grief never completely goes away, Jelena, she said softly, but it does change over time. It becomes less raw, more manageable. As the 1-year anniversary of my move to independence approached, I realized just how much had changed, not just in my circumstances, but deep inside me. The constant anxiety that had been my silent companion since childhood had diminished, almost imperceptibly. I made decisions without constantly hearing my parents' critical voices echoing in my head. I decorated my apartment, chose my clothes, pursued interests, all without once considering whether they would meet with approval. I was becoming the person I might have been all along if only I'd been given the space to develop naturally. Not perfect, not always confident, no, but authentically, profoundly myself. The journey continued to have its painful moments, its raw edges, but I no longer questioned whether it was worth the immense cost. 18 months after the day my family tried to break down my door, my apartment truly became my sanctuary. The space that had sparked such intense conflict was now completely transformed. Not by expensive designers my parents had tried to hire, but by my own evolving sense of what made me feel at home. My paintings, vibrant and expressive, hung on walls painted in colors I'd chosen. Plants thrived on my window sills, vibrant and alive. Books I loved filled the shelves, no one telling me they were a waste of time. The legal battles had finally quieted. My parents had eventually accepted that their relentless attempts to regain control through the courts were futile and expensive. The restraining order remained firmly in place, though I had eventually modified it to allow limited contact through approved channels, mainly email. This gave me the power to set clear boundaries around when and how I engaged with them. My relationship with my extended family had reached a new, fragile equilibrium. Some relatives, like Aunt Patricia, maintained polite but distant contact, carefully avoiding any mention of the rift. Others, like Uncle David and Aunt Susan, have become stronger supports than ever before, offering the kind of genuine family connection that nurtured rather than constrained. Holidays were now spent with chosen family, with friends who felt like sisters rather than out of obligation. It was a change that brought both a pang of sadness and immense relief. Nathan and I had established an uneasy truce. Our monthly coffee meetings were stiff and stilted at first, both of us unsure how to relate without our ingrained patterns of golden child and scapegoat. Gradually, we found new, neutral conversation territory, discussing movies or books. During our last meeting, he surprised me by admitting, "Sometimes I think you were right to leave. Dad's been even more controlling since you've been gone." The tiny seed of awareness in that statement gave me a glimmer of hope that Nathan might someday examine his own relationship with our parents. I didn't push it, knowing from painful experience that such realizations couldn't be forced. Professionally, I had found unexpected growth through my independence. Without my father's influence dictating my career choices, I discovered I had talents and interests I had never been allowed to explore. The freelance marketing work I had taken on out of financial necessity had serendipitously led to specialized projects in arts promotion, beautifully blending my creative and business skills in ways that felt authentic and deeply fulfilling. My friendship with Olivia had deepened into something that felt more like family than just friendship. We had weekly dinner nights, held spare keys to each other's apartments, and provided the kind of mutual support I had always imagined healthy families shared. Through her, I had built connections with others who formed a vibrant community of chosen family. Dating had also taken on a new, liberating dimension. Without my parents' looming approval over potential relationships, I was finally free to discover what I truly wanted in a partner. After several casual relationships, I had been dating Dylan for 6 months, a kind, creative man who respected boundaries in a way that showed me what healthy love truly could look like. Therapy with Dr. Morris continued, though less frequently now. Our sessions focused less on crisis management and more on deeper, more profound healing, addressing the childhood patterns that still occasionally influence my reactions to stress or conflict. Family estrangement comes with its own unique grief process. Dr. Morris explained during one session, "You're grieving not just the relationship you had, but the one you wish you had. That's a complex loss." The grief, she described, came in waves still. There were days when I missed the good moments with my family, the rare instances of connection and warmth that had kept me hoping for change for so many years. Mother's Day and Father's Day were particularly difficult. Social media overflowing with celebrations of healthy parent-child relationships that painfully highlighted the absence in my own life. But alongside the grief, there was undeniable growth. I was learning to parent myself in the ways my parents never had, providing the validation, support, and unconditional acceptance I had always craved. I celebrated my own achievements, comforted myself through difficulties, and gradually, slowly, replaced the harsh, critical internal voices with kinder, more compassionate ones. The entire process of healing showed me that their controlling behavior had never truly been about love, even though they had always framed it that way. Real love celebrates independence and growth. Real love respects boundaries and differences. Real love seeks connection without ownership. My experience had made me more acutely aware of similar dynamics in others' lives. When my younger cousin, Jamie, reached out, confiding that she felt suffocated by family expectations, I was able to offer understanding without imposing solutions. I shared resources that had helped me and assured her that her feelings were valid, whatever path she chose. One unexpected, profound area of healing came through my art. The paintings I created after the break-in attempt vividly reflected my emotional journey, starting with dark, confined images and gradually opening to more light and expansive space. A local gallery owner, who purchased my work for a group show, described it as a visual journey from confinement to freedom, not knowing the deeply personal story behind the evolution. The most profound lesson I learned through this entire challenging journey was that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's absolutely necessary for authentic relationships. Boundaries define where one person ends and another begins, creating the essential space for genuine connection, rather than control or obligation. Far from destroying relationships, healthy boundaries make true intimacy possible. I also learned that healing isn't linear. There were still days when a simple email from my mother could trigger old patterns of guilt and self-doubt. There were nights when I questioned whether complete estrangement would have been easier than the complex, limited contact I maintained. But each time I navigated these challenges, I grew stronger in my conviction that I had made the right choice for my well-being, for my very soul. The question of reconciliation remains open, not the kind that would require me to surrender my independence and return to old, unhealthy patterns, but a new relationship built on mutual respect. Is such a transformation possible? I don't know. Family systems resist change fiercely, and the longer patterns have been established, the harder they are to break. What I do know is that I am no longer willing to sacrifice my authenticity for approval. The price of admission to my life is respect for my boundaries. Those who can offer that, whether blood family or chosen family, are welcome. Those who cannot must remain at a safe distance. Not as punishment, but as protection for the self I have worked so incredibly hard to reclaim. That morning, the morning my family tried to break down my door, it marked the violent, undeniable end of one chapter and the fierce, defiant beginning of another. What they saw in my hands that day wasn't just legal paperwork or a recording phone. It was my absolute reclamation of power, a power they had never intended me to have. Their horror? It was the chilling recognition that they could no longer control my narrative. They could no longer control my life. The journey since then has been incredibly challenging, yes, but profoundly, undeniably worthwhile. It's been filled with difficult choices, but also with so much unexpected joy. I'm still discovering who I am, outside of my family's suffocating expectations. Still learning to truly trust my own voice after decades of having it silenced. But each day, each choice, brings me closer to the person I was meant to be all along. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love, really, truly love? How did you navigate that incredibly challenging terrain? Please share your stories and your insights in the comments below. I really, truly want to know. And if this story resonated with you, if any part of it spoke to your soul, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might be on similar journeys towards independence and authentic living. Thank you for listening to my story. And please, always remember, your need for boundaries and for respect is absolutely valid, especially when others don't understand it.